Hey guys, Hot Sauce Z here, back again for another video. Today we're going to discuss the rather lengthy and detailed post that DICE published to Reddit and the forums earlier this morning. This post discusses at length a lot of the reasoning and process behind why DICE is changing the BTK values and introducing the proximity spot feature in the next update 5.2. As some of you will remember, the introduction of the 5.2 changes several days ago was met with much controversy and distaste. DICE is seeking to rectify some of that today and provide more information on the update so that people will feel more informed on why the changes are happening. They are sure to mention transparency a lot in this post, as this is something the community has harped on them for not having enough of in the past. I think that today's post certainly illustrates that DICE is committed to having more transparency and letting us know what's going on. It's vastly improved compared to what it was half a year ago. DICE took many of the top questions regarding Update 5.2 and did their best to answer each one in depth with today's post. There's a lot to process, so I'll just try to pick out the highlights and the overall main idea for you guys. If you'd like to read the entire post, I'll be sure to link it in the description box below. Okay, to start, DICE says that changing the TTK of the game is not their intention with these gunplay updates in 5.2. The goal is to achieve a better balance and niche for each weapon type that further differentiates which weapons are suitable for situations that arise within the game. DICE says we're not invested in changing the lethality of Battlefield 5, nor punishing skilled players who are consistent in landing their shots, or the players who push for that critical headshot. And are also sure to iterate that this is not blanket damage reduction like was attempted 1 year ago. They add later on that their initial TTK change around a year ago was a brute force method that just blanket reduced damage without taking into account the gun's handling characteristics, spec trees, or any other setup. In contrast, it really seems like DICE has put a lot of time and thought into these weapon changes for 5.2 this time by actually balancing each weapon's stats with its damage and range. DICE feels that the current weapon balance only caters to skilled players, and that these skilled players ignore the vast majority of the weapons available in the game and stick to a handful of favorites. I myself don't do that, as I tend to rotate through all the weapons as I work on assignments, but I know that many players find a weapon that they enjoy, for example the 1907 SF, and stick to that. They guild it and then aim to climb leaderboards of total kills with that gun. To that end, players are always going to have favorites. That's just natural. But I think what DICE really means here is that they want to reduce the viability of one gun to perform in all situations, meaning the player is going to have to differentiate their class and weapon selection based on the situation that each round presents them with. They want to effectively increase the spectrum that all the game's weapons fit into. On one end, they want skill cannons that experienced players can use to maximize their damage and feel rewarded. But on the other end, they want to provide weapons with lower damage, but also better handling that a less skilled or entry-level player can feel confident with to help them stick with the game. It's clear that DICE is concerned about the total player numbers for this game, as a lot of this change is to make the game more accessible to Christmas noobs, as people tend to call them. They go on in the post to say that a big goal of theirs with Update 5.2 is to reduce the frustration that causes people to quit the game. According to DICE, one reason folks quit is when they feel the game is unbalanced. Yes, 100 times yes. But then they go on to add that weapon balance is a, in quotes, small part of that. Yes, small indeed. Because let's not ignore the obvious reason a round is unbalanced. It's because there's no functional team balancer in this game, and DICE knows it, thus the small part being included there. Moving on, DICE adds that people also quit because they feel they're being shot in the back too much, and that the data indicates that most people are getting shot in the back from long ranges. DICE was sure to also iterate that they are not against flanking, and neither the gunplay changes or the proximity spot are aimed at reducing the effectiveness of a good flank. Instead, they merely want to reduce the engagement ranges in BF5 back into a range they are more historically comfortable with, like in BF4 and BF1. These changes aim to make short-range weapons less viable at long ranges, but not completely remove the ability to kill at range. They just want it easier to determine which guns are more suited for that purpose. As for what this means for medic, I would assume that if you are choosing to fight at range with the medic class, then you will need something like the jungle carbine to get it done, rather than trying to make that Sten reach out. After 5.2, that will no longer be as viable. According to what DICE has gathered from surveys, they claim that the gunplay in BF5 feels stale and they want to refresh it. This is presumably to drive a Year 2 push and further move the game away from the terrible Year 1. They also go on to claim that this is not a change that's meant to capture Christmas noobs, only to then revert it back afterwards. I believe that it is definitely meant to help capture and retain Christmas noobs, but the fact that they won't be reverting it back in the new year this time is the key takeaway. They aren't going to try and pull that, "see, we listened to the community" deal they did last year. With update 5.2, the Christmas noobs and less skilled players should feel that they have a weapon that they can easily use to get kills with. DICE hopes to set the balance up in such a way that allows players to slowly work their way up to the more skill cannon type weapons as they become more comfortable with the game. The goal is not to aim the entire game at less skilled players, or make all guns easier, but that's certainly what it sounds like the main idea of this push is. So I'm hoping to see that this new Spectrum really provides the skilled player with some rewarding gunplay as well, and doesn't completely leave veterans of the franchise, or even just this game, out in the cold. So, you may be wondering, what are some of the numbers being thrown around with regards to these changes? Well, the graphs they showed last time demonstrated that weapons like the STG-44 and Thompson would require 1 or 2 more bullets to kill. They add on today that even though the guns require more bullets to kill, the time to kill with the guns is only increasing between 20 to 80 milliseconds. To go along with the higher BTK, DICE is also buffing the recoil on the guns by reducing it around 20% for most cases. In some more aggressive instances, the guns have seen a recoil reduction of 40%, though they don't inform us of which guns exactly. That will come with the full patch notes for 5.2. That may leave you wondering about MMGs, which can already feel pretty laser-like. Don't worry, DICE states that MMGs were left alone as far as recoil changes go, because they felt that their high rate of fire made up for it. MMGs are still receiving a BTK change though. That's all DICE had to say about the gunplay changes, so now let's jump into the new target acquisition, or as I'm calling it, the proximity spot changes. DICE is pretty quick to add that while this is a spotting change, their intention is not to add more spotting to the game. If anything, they want to dial it back a bit because they are reducing spot durations across the board. It seems like the last big spotting overhaul that I made a video about was a first attempt by DICE at addressing the continuing concerns about visibility in BF5. That change was too much. The spot flare radius is far too large, there's too many of them, and they last too long. I'm very happy that changes are coming on that front. As for the proximity spot, DICE wants to make it easier for players to see enemies inside combat ranges where it's very easy to die quickly. They want to make sure that players are able to discern friend from foe in the space immediately around them in those hectic close-range situations. This will help to reduce the frustration of dying to someone or something that was in front of your face the whole time. According to DICE, in the majority of cases where the level environment is clean, the lighting is balanced, and the player does not remain static for too long, the new target system is not even necessary. So why has DICE added it then? Well, it's because they are owning up to the fact that they know soldier visibility can still be very poor, even after all the changes they've put in over the last year. They say, given how detailed our levels are, and how easily soldiers blend into the environment, despite our past changes to soldier visibility, this system helps us address that without compromising on our high standards for visuals in our map designs. Given that information, I have a bit of a proposition myself. Many people may recall that the game looked visually much better in its early months compared to what it looks like now. Many of the sacrifices for visuals were made for playability so that these soldier visibility issues could be addressed. If this new target acquisition goes off without a hitch, maybe DICE can consider reverting some of the weird lighting and haze choices that were put in place for the sake of soldier visibility. It's an interesting thought, but one will have to wait and see how the new targeting system is received. After the first round of 5.2 information came out, players were concerned again about flanking with regards to this proximity spot, claiming that it would ruin some of those good flanks. DICE says that they don't believe that it will harm flanks, which sounds a bit unconvincing. They go on to say that flanks typically occur outside of your field of view, where the target acquisition spot wouldn't be active anyway, so it shouldn't be a factor. They in fact encourage flanks through the addition of the new spot indicator above the minimap that will tell you when you are actively spotted. Players were also concerned that people would abuse the new system by increasing their FOV to spot more enemies on screen at once for themselves. DICE says that indeed, people can do this, but they were going to do it anyway with or without the new spot system. They then go on to cite the disadvantages of a high FOV, such as smaller targets, to be the balance for this kind of exploit. I'm not sure that this is a good answer to this concern, but it's the one we're getting for now. In the big picture, it's probably not a huge issue since not everyone runs the fisheye setup, but if it begins being exploited, it would be interesting to see if DICE would reduce the target acquisition to only activating out to a certain point horizontally. Okay, now that we've received 2 updates on the big changes coming to Battlefield 5 with update 5.2, here's my thoughts. The gunplay changes are not something to be up in arms about. At least, I don't believe so. The game's TTK is fine where it's at, that's true. But it really seems like DICE is genuinely doing their best to keep the TTK right where it is, with only minor changes that have to occur technically to do what they want to do. Increasing the spectrum that guns fit into to make each one more unique and case-specific is a good plan. It's going to give the game more depth and make it feel less like the guns contain only a handful of stats and are just reskins of the same thing. Making players choose which gun fits a given circumstance will help add depth as well, because you won't be able to just run one gun for every engagement range and scenario, and it might help you experience more of the game than you were before. Of course, on the other side of the coin, if you have no interest in trying another gun, then you will be on your way to mastering your weapon of choice, and the playstyle you will need to utilize in order to be effective with it. This can be a rewarding experience, and will help DICE on its goal of player retention. As for the target acquisition changes, I'm all for trying those out as well. It's not lost on most people who have put any time into this game that visibility can be poor very often. This can help counteract that, and should help people to go on longer streaks, because they're going to be able to better see what they need to react to. At that point, it will be up to player skill to dictate if they make it out of an engagement alive, not whether or not one of their enemies happen to find a good spot to capitalize on the game's poor visibility. I know for myself, I ran across several instances just since they announced these new target acquisition changes, where I knew that if that system was in place, I could have avoided a silly death. I'm definitely liable to change my tune if these updates come out and are horrible. We all reserve the right to change our opinion after we get a chance to go hands-on. And DICE is prepared to listen to that feedback. They have stated multiple times that they are constantly monitoring what is being said and are also not calling this a one-and-done update. They know that it will need tweaks after it comes out and are happy to read feedback and get the new systems where they need to be to achieve their own goals, as well as to ensure that players are happy. I look forward to the update notes and all that 5.2 will bring. DICE so far has been trending upwards with their patches. I'm hoping that with 5.2, the trend continues. Well folks, that will wrap it up for today. How are y'all feeling about what DICE is discussing with these posts? In your mind, is update 5.2 going to be well received, or do you think it will be a massive flop? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, I encourage you to like it and subscribe as well to support the channel. I'd also encourage you to share this with any other Battlefielders you feel would get some value from this kind of content. I'm Hot Sauce Z, and I'll see you guys on the next video or out on the battlefield.